Welcome to Parts of the Arts with me, Rebecca Godden. In this episode, we have Emma Hollywood, who is a British actress represented by VisABLE People. She has been involved in productions such as Doctors and the BBC drama The Reckoning. Emma is an ambulatory part-time wheelchair user and hosts a podcast of her own called And the Show Goes On, where she discusses her experiences as a disabled actor and also raises awareness of chronically ill and disabled actors across the entertainment industry. This is a really lovely chat with Emma, so please delve in and enjoy. Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for coming on Part of the Arts. Thank you for approaching me. I love people do that. You know, if you want to come on the podcast, talk to me. So yeah, that was really lovely to have you reach out on Instagram. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Are you having a relaxing Sunday?
Yeah, I'm having a pretty relaxing Sunday. Like next week is pretty busy, so I'm just kind of like resting. And with like chronic fatigue, which is something that I'll probably talk about, you know, I usually have to rest. So after this will probably be like the only thing I do today, and then I'm just gonna not do anything, just relax. And then
I mean, that sounds sensible as well. I
Yeah.
feel like as performers, we should do that more often in general.
Oh,
You know,
100%, yeah.
it's a lot of the onto the next thing, and next, and actually rest. It's something I've had to train myself to do. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not someone that has chronic illness, but I do not have the best immune system.
Yeah.
Let's say, and I do pick things up, you know, quite easily, and I'm not very good at, you know, if you get a cold or something,
Mhm.
and you should really just take yourself to bed and make yourself better. I'm not very good. I'm good at just being like, I'm fine. I'll take some tablets and just keep going. And
No,
then,
that's me, yeah. But I'm so stubborn, and my mind, it's just like it races a lot, and I just like want to do everything, but obviously my body's like, no, we're not doing that today. I'm like, okay.
the brain and body, like, oh my God, the combat
Yeah,
that you have to have.
it's so
And
annoying.
talking of the brain and the body, the things that you say and the things that you do, has there been something lately or something that haunts you to this day that you've either said or done that really, you know, just should have just stayed within you and not come out?
God, there are a lot. But well, recently I've been rehearsing for a local play, and in the scene, me and this guy, we have to hug.
Mm,
And I'm quite new to this theatre group, and the idea of having to like it's not like just like a little hug, it's a proper kind of intimate like embrace. And I felt like pretty awkward.
mm.
He probably didn't feel that awkward. It was probably just me being stupid. But we did the hug, and it was like one of the most awkward awkward hugs. And after, to kind of relieve the tension, I was like, oh my God, that's like one of the worst hugs I've ever had. But I kind of said that just to be like funny and just to kind of like make it lighthearted. And then the director was like, oh no, don't worry, we'll work on the blocking. And I was like, oh no, I wasn't being serious. I was just trying to, I thought, oh no, that is really embarrassing. And
You were
then
trying to break the ice, literally. You were
yeah,
trying to just be like, obviously, you know, an intimate scene
yeah,
is an intimate scene. And especially if you've not done many of them or you've not worked, especially always you haven't worked with that actor
yeah,
alongside that actor very often, you know, it's sometimes easier when you know the person well, even though you're
yeah,
performing, you know, you've got that rapport, haven't you? And you feel comfortable.
yeah,
So I think 100% I think a lot of actors will relate to that.
yeah, definitely. He is really lovely. It's just like, it was so awkward. And you know, when people say like, "Oh, if you're being embarrassed, just say, oh, I'm a bit embarrassed." I
Yeah.
probably went a bit too far and said, "Oh, you know, that was a really bad hug." And then it was a bit awkward, but it was fine. It was fine. And then the next week, I did the hug, and I read the blocking, but I don't know if this guy read the blocking.
Mm.
And I ran to him, and I nearly knocked him over. So that was great. So it's like one extreme to the other. I was like too awkward the first time, and then the next time I was just like absolutely bulldozed him. And luckily he had laughed. But I was like, oh my God,
You were like
this is
so
great.
intense with your attention. You were like, I've got this.
Yeah, because my character, it says my character runs, um, but I don't know if he realised that I was going to do that, and I probably ran too fast, and like my gravity of my body just didn't work. I nearly like toppled him over, and then he was like, "Oh God, you nearly rugby tackled me," and I was like, "I'm sorry."
I love
I
the
was
way
like,
like the director's probably like, this is, you're happy to see each other. This is a hug scene. This isn't tag
"Yeah,
rugby, you know.
yeah, I know." It was like I was thinking, do I say it was just a character choice or I don't. But
At
yeah, it was
least
all good.
like you had the commitment. I love that level of commitment.
Yeah,
Committed to this. I'm gonna go for it. It's almost like you going for like a dirty dancing list, Emma.
yeah, yeah. But luckily, I think we've got like a good balance now, so I'll probably won't go
Good.
as far next
Yeah.
time.
What rehearsals for, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
what rehearsals for.
Yeah,
And
everyone
I'm
with
sure
blessing.
the final take or the show will be gorgeous. And talking of, things that we've seen, have you seen anything or listened to anything recently within the arts world that's left you with like that spark of, oh, this is brilliant and given you some inspiration?
I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't been to the theatre in quite a while, which is weird since like I'm an actor. Um, but because you sent me these questions before, and I was trying to think, and probably like the most recent thing that really kind of gave me a spark was the Traitors. Because
Mm,
the most recent series, that was the first series I watched of the Traitors. And like I was like, oh, it's probably won't be as good as everyone's saying, but it
mhm.
was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I need to like watch the other series. So I need to watch series 1 and 2, but it's so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad like to hear that from someone that hasn't watched it. So I'm probably gonna get like backlash from this. I am part of like the 1% that's never watched The Traitors. I've not
Yeah.
watched an episode. I'm not very good at being able to commit to something that's on like every single night. Like my
Yeah.
schedule's so varied, and with a show like that, it's not really like a binge-worthy show for me. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a story where I'm like, I need to find out what happens next. It's reality TV, isn't it? Where it's
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm just not very good at, keeping up. Um so I tend to miss a few episodes and then be like, well, it's too late now. And I'm not going to be sitting down watching a whole day
Yeah.
worth of this show.
Definitely.
But exactly what you said, so many people have raved about it. And so many people have said to me, Becca, you'd love it. And a few people have said to me, Becca, you'd be great on it. And I'm like, okay, I feel like
Yeah.
I need to watch this now.
Yeah. I got sent an email like but to audition for series 3 of The Traitors. It was just like a casting call from my agent, and I was
Mm.
like, "Oh, I don't really know whether to do it," but now I've seen it, I'm like, "You know what? If I got that again, I'd probably go on it."
Oh my gosh, do
That
it.
that would be so cool. That would be really
We're
cool.
manifesting, Emma. Next thing you know, we're going to
Yeah.
be seeing you on the train.
That's
That's
my
when I'll
job.
watch it. I'll watch it if you're on it. There you go.
Brilliant.
But I'm glad you said it's as good as the hype because I do feel like I've got a bit of FOMO, especially when
Yeah.
people are ranting about it and raving about it, and I'm like, I
No,
can't.
it is really good. The thing is, I don't really like watching new stuff, like,
Mm,
I know what I like and I like what I know. So I
yes,
kind of had to force myself into getting into it, but it is really good. Like it is
when you
worth
got
it, like
into it, you were like, this is worth
yeah,
it. I've made a good choice.
yeah, it's amazing. Amazing.
Okay.
And Claudia Winkleman is great, so
I mean, she's just an icon, isn't she?
she is.
And I think I have seen quite, that's the thing as well. You see a lot on social media. Like I've seen quite a lot of things, a lot of memes and things with her as well. And the
Yeah,
fact that apparently she's quite sassy, isn't she? With her, she doesn't
yeah.
take
Oh,
nonsense from
definitely.
anyone.
Yeah, love Claudia Winkleman.
Which, we love that kind of female empowerment, that
Yeah, 100%.
just getting stuff done and just being, what are you doing with things? Oh, great. So you've touched slightly on, living with chronic illness and being an actor, kind of in the beginning of the podcast today. I'd love to like just talk to you more about that, like your experiences of working in the industry, and you're mainly kind of a screen actor on TV, film. So,
Yeah.
how is that? And, is it accessible for you with how you work?
Yeah, so, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, a few years ago, and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome about 8-9 years ago.
Mm.
And I've always wanted to be an actor, and I just really didn't want it to stop me.
Mm.
Um, and I got a wheelchair, I think probably when I was about 14, 15. I'm 20 now. And that's really been kind of a life changer for me because I can do acting in a wheelchair. Um, and I got an agent when I was 17. I'm trying to remember all the dates. And it's it's a disability agency based in London, which is amazing because obviously they understand and they
Mm.
find jobs that suit me. But having said that, it's still very hard as a disabled actor. And a lot of I got a comment on my TikTok who said like, you know, disabled actors are more likely to get roles or something like that because they think, oh, it's just ticking a box. And I was like, I
Mm.
can guarantee you that is not the case. Like obviously, casting directors do like ticking a box, do like being inclusive, but it's
Yeah.
still, you know, very hard. And the thing is, I do so mostly screen acting, and that is because I love screen most, but also because it is like probably the most accessible.
Mhm.
And a lot of other disabled actors have said that they prefer screen because it's more accessible. And theatre is notoriously inaccessible, not only
Yeah.
for audience members, but especially for like, cast members.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I haven't had any like massive issues with my disability and acting, but it's just getting casting directors to understand and getting like access coordinators. So access coordinators,
Yeah.
if you don't know, are basically coordinators that work with disabled people on screen and stage.
And
And I
are they are productions getting access coordinators more readily? Like we heard a massive kind of surge for intimacy coordinators. That
Yeah,
wasn't really a thing a good few years ago, and now that is being, made the minimum requirement for doing scenes like that, or especially for film and TV. Is that the same with access coordinators? Is it like a must, or is it a maybe?
um, I think it is getting better, but the thing is,
Mm.
like, I've actually never worked on a job that had an access coordinator.
Okay.
But I've spoken to other actors on my podcast who have had access coordinators, and they've said like it's just amazing, and it just allows us to act and do what we love without worrying about our needs. And
Yeah.
I think like one of the main issues I have, being an actor in a wheelchair or having a chronic illness is whether to mention, what I need and my access needs to, producers or casting directors, because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. And I know I am very capable of not only acting, but also, you know, looking after myself if I do have, symptoms of my illness during a job. But it's just worrying that, they're going to think that I'm a burden or anything like that. So I think not only do we need more, actors in wheelchairs, but we also need more actors with chronic illnesses
Mm.
and disabilities where there are symptoms,
Yeah.
because, access isn't just like a ramp. It's also, being able to, places where I can put my legs up or if I need a
Yeah.
break. It's just those little access things that I think we need to improve on, definitely.
And that's so like great to say that and shout about that, because you're completely right. I think a lot of people, when they just think of access, it's like making somewhere accessible. That like but not like what you said in every way of the sense, or every sense of the word. Even it's just like making somewhere accessible for a wheelchair user, for a buggy, for wheels, basically, not actually, like you said, making it an accessible environment in general, which is so much more and so much more nuance. And I think it's really interesting what you said of, we need more, not only more disabled actors, but more actors with a chronic illness, and especially within mainstream shows and films, because
Yeah.
not only is that representation for the audience on the screen, that's also that representation for the crew, because
Yeah.
it would become normalized, right? It would just become part of the process. I was talking to Katie Anna, who you also know a little
Yeah.
bit. You had her on your podcast, and we were saying about making the show accessible from, well, we were talking about theatre, making the show accessible whilst in creation rather than it being an afterthought, and
Yeah.
being, making artistic subtitles, for example, and it's part of the landscape of the world that you've produced on the stage, rather than thinking, shit, we've got to get
Yeah.
subtitles for one show of the 10-week run, or whatever, which we know is not good enough at all. I wonder if it's like it translates in that way within the film and TV industry as well.
I think so. I mean, the good thing about my agency as well is when casting directors are approaching us, they know that, as actors, we have disability of some kind. So I suppose I have that comfort with
Yeah.
that, knowing that they understand.
And you've got
But
your agent advocating for you, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%. She's amazing. I'm really lucky to, have the agent. And yeah, I just think like, what Katie Anna McConnell said, um, it just needs to be a better, there needs to be a better inclusive like situation with
Hmm.
with the entire process rather than, like you said, just, after.
Yeah.
I think with like auditions and self tapes and all that, it just needs to be in mind for all people because
Yeah.
like access is something that everyone needs. Like everyone has different access needs or some kinds of needs. It's not just disabled people.
Hmm.
So I think we just need to be more aware of that and yeah.
And more mindful, I think. And also I think not be scared to open the conversation maybe, and talk about it and ask people. And I think, we live in a world of cancel culture.
Yeah.
And I do think people are sometimes scared to even lift a lid on that, especially within the professional art world, because
Yeah.
I think sometimes it can feel maybe for some people like too difficult, not just from like a conversational point of view, but like a procedural point of view. And it's that kind of like, no, if we all just chatted and we all opened up and we were all honest about what we needed, wouldn't wouldn't it just be easier, and wouldn't the world just be a nicer place within the industry if, we're
Yeah.
honest, we're honest people anyway. So just for that to just be put into, like you said, the initial plans, the initial conversations, if you've got it from its infancy of a project, it's going to be a lot easier just to follow through. And
Yeah. And the thing you said as well about cancel culture, I think
mm,
the most frustrating thing for me with cancel culture is it's making everyone scared to like even speak to disabled people.
yeah.
And I just want like I'd rather I know everyone's different, all disabled people are different, but for me, I'd rather you make an insensitive comment with good intentions rather than
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I mustn't say anything at all because it just makes it worse and it makes it feel like disability is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So I would kind of say to any kind of non-disabled people, if you have a question, especially with like casting directors or anything, like just say it because I don't want disability to be like this elephant in the room. Oh, I can't say anything. Obviously, don't be horrible. Don't say a horrible
Yeah,
comment. That's just obvious.
don't be an awful human being, but
Yeah, don't be awful. But you like, just it's okay to get things wrong. It's
yeah.
okay to accidentally say something, as long as you say it with good intentions. It's okay. And I know there are going to be many disabled people who think differently to me, but I just really don't want disability to be seen as taboo.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And I think that's just so interesting, isn't it, as well? Like, as human beings, I think in general, we just need to give each other a bit more grace.
yeah,
And like, we're always learning, especially
yeah,
within art. It's forever changing landscape, right? So we're
yeah,
never going to get everything right all the time within our industry, let alone within kind of conversational things that are around what's happening within what we're doing. And I think, um, being brave and being bold is such a nice message to, yeah, and
Yeah.
just to be able to, and also like just to be able to support, like, I don't know, do you find when people are like asking you questions or chatting about it, do you feel a level of like camaraderie there, like a level of like, I don't know, is that nice to be
Yeah,
able to do
a
that?
100%. I appreciate people asking about my disability and my illness or whatever, because it shows that they understand.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite things is when, if I talk to someone about my chronic illness and I say, "Oh, I've got POTS, I've got chronic fatigue," and then they say that they're going to research after, that makes me really happy because it shows that they're understanding my illness and my disability. And yeah,
And
it's
that
just
kind of saying, "Oh, I'm gonna research it as well," that must be quite nice, not
yeah,
being like to you, "Oh, what is that?" And you have to reel it off, because I can imagine on the flip side, that can also be quite
yeah,
exhausting if
yeah. I'm like, "What's that?"
someone's like, "Well, what is that? Oh, how did you get diagnosed with that? When?" And you're probably like, "Oh gosh, I have to live with this. I don't really wanna go through
Yeah,
that every single time." So I think that's such a great thing actually for people to go, "Actually, I'm an adult. I can
yeah.
do my own research. Thank you for sharing that with me," you know?
100%. And that's not to say as well that, like, people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, the only thing you ever talk about to them is their disability.
No.
Obviously, we're not saying that. But if you are curious, don't like don't make it taboo. Just talk to me. I'm a normal human being. Like, it's just a part of me. My chronic illness is a part of me. It's part of my disability. I mean, if I'm in a wheelchair, you're going to see the wheels. We're not be like, oh, she's not in a wheelchair. She's not in a wheelchair. I am in a wheelchair. So you can acknowledge that, and acknowledging it makes it more comfortable. And yeah, and like I
Mm,
said, it doesn't mean that you have to talk about it all the time or be like, oh, am I in the wheelchair or whatever. But acknowledging it and not making it taboo, I think, is really important.
yeah. And have you had, if you don't mind sharing, have you had negative experiences where you've just been like, that is not okay, either on set, at work, or just in life, where you've just either had to speak up, or maybe you wanted to speak up and you didn't, but you were left feeling icky
Um,
afterwards?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, so I did, well, this year I've been trying to do more like local theatre. Obviously, I'm doing the local theatre that I talked about before with that hug
Mm.
situation. But I also auditioned for another local theatre production. Um, and I won't go into obviously who it is or whatever, but the director has a daughter who also has POTS. And that really kind of helped me because I thought, oh, like she'll understand. And,
Mm.
because I was really worried during the audition because I had to sit down in some of the scenes and I was like, oh no, like she won't want me in the production. Um, but it went really well. And then I got a call saying that they'd like to offer me the lead role, the title role. And I was like, oh, that's so amazing.
Amazing.
And I could tell by when she was talking to me through the phone, she was just sounded really concerned. She said, I don't know how it's going to work with your condition.
Mm.
Um, is there anything that you need or anything? And I basically said that, so the rehearsals would be like 3 days a week, for like 2 months. And the days of the rehearsals would be like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I said, would there be any way for me to cut down on rehearsals just ever so slightly? Like whether
Mm.
do 2 out of 3 a week or do the 3 days a week, but leave slightly earlier. Because even though I would be the title role, I'm not in all the scenes.
And
And
that's a long day, 9 till 6 for
yeah.
anyone.
And I'm like,
Like,
this
that's
is
long.
how much a dramatic production. Like, oh my
Like,
gosh, this is really serious.
can everyone calm down?
Yeah. But and she was like, oh, I don't really know, like I just don't think it's going to work. And I was having these conversations, um, and I think she was kind of warming to the idea of, she's like, oh, maybe I could think about cutting it down. But I was thinking to myself, I don't feel welcome.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm a nuisance. I feel like I'm doing her a favor. Like I'm, down on my knees begging to get this role. Please accommodate me. And I just felt like a bit of an inconvenience.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, I'm actually just going to turn this down because you I don't know. It just didn't really like sit
Didn't
right
sit
with
right.
me.
And if you weren't feeling like we said, if you weren't feeling supported in the infancy of that process,
Yeah.
what are you going to feel like when you get in it?
Yeah,
You
and that's the
know?
thing, and, like, I do understand, obviously, that, being the main role is it's going to be hard to be flexible. The things I were asking were things, that could be sorted, and, I've done, like, BBC shows and ITV shows, and they've been more than accommodating, and I'm just like, so a big TV production can be accommodating,
Yeah.
but you can't, even though you're a local amateur dramatics production.
But
And,
is
like, I
there
mean,
is there
yeah.
something in that? I don't wanna offend anyone here, but as in, is
Yeah,
there something in that because it was Amdram, they just they don't have the experience? Like, as in they don't have the professional
yeah,
industry experience that
yeah,
the big
yeah,
TV houses do, and they also don't have the policies and procedures in place. Do you know what I mean? I
yeah,
I don't do Amdram. I haven't really.
mhm,
As a kid, I did theatre groups and things like that, but as in I've not done
yeah,
like amateur dramatic, but I've had a little bit of an experience with a local theatre where I helped another actor kind of within their
yeah,
process. I was kind of their access coordinator because it was an actor with a learning disability with
yeah,
Down syndrome. And I was helping him to kind of progress from the theatre company that I ran into mainstream other things. And he just asked if I'd come and support him for a bit of the process and help
yeah,
the director. And I was like, absolutely, of course. Um, and I came in from an outside view because him and his mum advocated for him and asked me, but that
yeah,
wasn't really thought of beforehand by the said Amdram company because they maybe just didn't have the professional experience or people. Not that there was a lack of wanting to help and understand, because when I was there, they were like, oh my gosh, this is, of course, this makes so much sense. And I wasn't needed for as much as the actor actually thought I would be. And I knew he'd be all right. But it's just that
yeah,
comfort, isn't it? And I was super happy to do it. But some of the communication that I had was again, just not professional. And
no,
some of the ways in which this performer that I was, supporting was spoken about,
yeah,
the
I
terminology, again, it wasn't, and like what you said earlier, it wasn't,
yeah,
they weren't being mean and they were trying, but there was just a lack of professionalism and a bit of naivety, I think.
yeah, and I think as well because it was, a local, theatre group, I was probably, like, one of the only disabled people, like,
Mm.
they've ever thought of casting, and I think that's why it's really important to have more disabled actors on screen and stage, because not only will it affect, the big production companies and, how they see, disability and acting. Also, it will hopefully have a ripple effect to
God,
local
yeah.
theatre groups, and hopefully, local theatre groups will be more accessible and more kind of aware.
Oh my God, visibility within like also rural theatre
Yeah,
companies. I do feel like, if you live in a big city, you are, of course, just going to be, subject to seeing lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, lots of different lived experiences.
yeah,
When you're in like those, I'm from a tiny village in like the middle of nowhere. I live in a city now, but I was underexposed as a child growing up to, other people that weren't me.
yeah,
And I think exactly like you said, if we can get it into people's living rooms on the
yeah,
TV, great, because that's accessible. But also if we can get it into your local village hall, in your amateur
yeah,
dramatic, society, you've got, a more accessible, cheaper theatre experience for a family to go and see. And then you've maybe got kids and grandparents and different generations seeing more visibility. I don't know if that makes
yeah,
sense. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
100%. I think, like, especially, with, like, kids seeing it, and, I
Mm.
recently interviewed, someone called Frankie Turton who's done a lot of children's theatre, and she's in a wheelchair, and I was thinking that must be, like, so amazing, like,
Yeah.
showing to kids, like, there can be disabled actors, and it's a way of exposing kids to, um, disability in acting. And also
Mm.
it will make them, if they see a disabled person in the street, they're not gonna be so shocked. 'Cause that's what I get a lot with, like, little kids where I'll be, like, in a wheelchair and they'll just be staring. And obviously it's funny because it's a kid. I'm not gonna be, like, really,
And
like,
their
offended by a
kids are
child,
normally
but
in awe as well, aren't they? They're just a bit like, "Ah, I've not seen that
yeah.
before." Yeah.
Yeah, just, like, pointing, and the parents are usually like, "Oh, don't look." But that is the thing, like, as well, that I discussed with, Frankie. She won't mind me, mentioning her, hopefully. But, like, I think it's, if your child sees a disabled person, like someone in a wheelchair,
Mm.
and they ask about it, don't be like, "Oh, don't y don't look at them," or anything, because I feel that just, that makes it awkward, and again, it makes it taboo. So I think there needs to be more disability awareness in schools, and disabled actors in kids' theatre and kids' shows, to make disability less shocking to children, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, if you're exposed to, you know, of want for a better word,
Yeah,
otherness, then it's just not you
yeah,
and your immediate family. Because as a kid, that's your world. Your world is you and whatever your immediate family expose you to. Like, you
yeah,
know what I mean? That's what it is. You're not advocating for yourself yet. You're not a fully formed human being.
yeah,
You're going with what your immediate party take you to or bring you to. So having that in schools and that access at an early age, you're just gonna if you had that as a kid, you're just gonna grow up
yeah,
as seeing everything through a different lens, aren't you? And just being just a bit more accepting and a bit more yeah, like you said, less shocked by otherness.
yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
being like, oh, that person not doesn't look like me or doesn't act like me or, but I understand that because I've been exposed
Yeah,
to it.
yeah, 100%.
I think that's so important. And, you've touched on it a few times. You've got your own podcast, which is so exciting,
Yeah.
called The Show Must Go On. And I'll link it all in the info of this episode because absolutely podcast supporting podcast. But on that, you specifically talk to people in the industry who are disabled or living with chronic illness, don't you?
Yes, yes, it is. So first of all, it's "And the Show Goes On." It was gonna
Oh,
be "The Show Must Go On," but it was taken, and I was
I'm
like, I
so
don't know
sorry,
whether
I got it wrong. So, and the show
it was
goes on.
fine.
I'm going to say it
No, the
again.
thing is,
And the show goes on.
things I would have loved to call it "The Show Must Go On," but there were so many podcasts called "The Show Must Go On." I was like, I wanna be different, but I still wanna, like, do the wordplay.
Well, I think that's brilliant because absolutely, I think my brain just went to that. And you know what I
Yeah.
wanted? I wanted a different name for this podcast as well.
Oh,
I
did you?
wanted Behind the Curtain.
Oh,
Um I know, but it sounded a little bit so I put it in Spotify, you do the whole see
yeah.
if someone's got the name and
Yeah,
a lot of people had called it either Behind the Curtain or Beyond the Curtain, and a few of them were
yeah.
stage related, like theatre related, but a few of them were also like true crime, as in like,
Oh god. Oh
like
my
Behind the Curtain, and I was like, "Oh god, I didn't really think of it in that way."
god.
I do
I
want
think
to
part
keep
of the
that
arts is
now.
great.
Thank you. So I was like, "Okay, we'll just keep that." So do you know what? The name that we got was the name that was meant to be with us. So yeah, tell us a bit more about And the Show Goes On.
Yeah, so, I started it in November, and I know a lot of actors can relate to this, and that is just waiting for jobs, and
Mm,
I wanted a way where I can talk about my acting and just think about acting more regularly when I'm not actively on a job. And I also wanted to share my experiences of being a disabled actor and an actor with a chronic illness, because the representation, like, it's getting better, but it's still pretty poor. Um, and I wanted to speak to other disabled actors and chronically ill actors, and creatives about their experience. And yeah, it's going really well. I'm really enjoying it, and it's like an outlet, I suppose, for me each week, and it's something to do. And I've made some friends from it. And I suppose the main thing with this podcast is I can, without sounding really cheesy, but I want to inspire other actors,
Yeah.
not only who have disabilities, but also actors with chronic illnesses and with
Yeah.
symptoms, to show that even if you do have symptoms and you are affected by your chronic illness, you can find a way to do what you love, whether that be acting or something else.
Mm,
So I thought that was a really important message for me to get out there, to show that, like, you can do what you want. You just need to do it in a different way,
mm.
to someone else. Yeah.
I love that. And like, and I'm kind of fixed myself on when you said, it sounds a bit cringy being like inspiring. No, it's great. And I think we probably as women,
Yeah.
and as people in the arts, I think we do often say like, oh, that feels a bit cringy or a bit icky. But actually, I feel like if we thought everything we did within this arts world was cringy, no one would do anything.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, I mean, I think there was a whole little surgence of it, wasn't there, on social media not long ago, of like embrace the cringe. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes you got to do things that you don't know if they're going to work, or you don't know are going to do what you want them to do, to just see it. What's that classic saying of, what is it, like, you've got to fail before you can fly,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example. And I feel quite similar to you with my podcast in the, you know, just get to chat to like-minded people,
Yeah.
and people that are from like different parts of the industry or different lived experience. And I find that inspiring. Like, from a selfish point of view, I also get so much out of these conversations,
Yeah.
and yeah, and you do a lot on social media for it as well. You're so much better than me on the socials. You're on it. I need to get better at that. Finding the time. And you've had some really interesting, yeah, guests on there. Have you got any like highlights from it? Not like specific people, but any like moments, nuggets of kind of wisdom that you've heard along the way through
Um,
the journey.
I mean, the thing is with like the interviews I've done, I've learned like so much. And I suppose like one thing that comes to mind, like a piece of advice, I interviewed an actor called Shreya and Patel,
Mm.
and I said to her, like, how do you talk to casting directors and producers about your disability, like for the audition? And she said she doesn't say, she basically says, what access needs she has, but she doesn't mention the condition or the disability, until she actually gets a job. And I was like, oh my God, that's so genius. Because
Mm.
you're showing them like, okay, I can only work, I don't know, 4 days a week or
Mm.
whatever it is, rather than what you're suggesting. But not mentioning the condition or disability allows them to, it stops them from making assumptions.
Ah.
Um, I suppose as well, like, because if I said to a casting director or a producer, like, I have chronic fatigue syndrome, you might like really panic and think, oh, she can't do anything. But the thing is
Mm.
the truth is, with my specific condition, obviously I suffer a lot with my chronic fatigue, but I can do lots of things. I can still do my job.
Yeah.
So I think that is something that, like, it really stuck in my mind. Like, that's what
Mhm.
I'm going to do, is just mention about my access needs rather than, listing my medical records, basically. I think that's like the main thing that stuck with me.
And
Um,
that's just great to hear as well, because it's reasonable adjustments, isn't it?
yeah,
Which
100%.
I think just should be done within life and work, regardless of, your condition or the thing that's happened to you or the thing that you have, like you said, not being identified by that, but actually
Yeah,
just being like, I just need some reasonable adjustments, and that should be enough to not
yeah,
then have to go into, like what you said, listing things, and
yeah,
hopefully like not, and also like, yeah, not feeling like you have to almost like prove yourself, like
yeah.
prove
That's the thing.
that
And
you need it.
I,
Yeah.
I don't mind talking about my conditions or saying what conditions I have, but I don't feel like I should necessarily have to say that, because I'm just
Yeah.
going for an acting job. I don't have to list my medical records or, all the conditions I have. I should just be like,
This is
these are
me
the
as an
access,
actor.
yeah, these are the access needs I have. And if you don't like it, then fine. I can't really do much
Bye.
about that, but
If you don't like it, just carry on walking.
yeah,
I love
exactly.
that. But also, like, I mean, like, taking ownership as well, I guess, of that and being like, this is what I need. And I think, again, as I don't know if you find it as women, as a woman, I also do just find it harder in general to say any needs as kind of forthrightly as maybe a male counterpart might.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
not
yeah, I'm
Yeah, sweeping
yeah,
generalization, but I do feel like it is a thing, especially
100%.
within rooms when you're in a when you're in a room with people and there's
Yeah,
many voices, it can be challenging.
100%. I'm so awful with saying, like, what I need, and I will push myself
Yeah.
until I cannot function.
Yeah.
When I was doing doctors, actually, it was the last scene, and I was just, like, so exhausted, and I did the last scene that I did, I think it was, like, 4 p.m. on the second day because it was, 2 days filming, and the last scene, my vision was essentially just gone. I was just like, it wasn't completely black, but it was like little like lights and stuff, and that's usually a sign that I'm just like really exhausted. But I was like,
Mhm.
I must get through this. I can't tell anyone. And
Oh,
obviously now, like that was a couple of years ago, and I probably would say now that
yeah.
I would go up to the director and be like, can I just have like 5 minutes? But that was my first like speaking role, and I was so scared of telling anyone about that because I was like, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot or be a burden. And that's the thing, like with my podcast and the guests I have on, they're definitely inspiring me to say what I need. And really, the
Yeah.
things that I need, they're not things that are going to really affect the production.
No.
It's just probably me being dramatic, but do you know what I mean? I just
Well,
feel like,
you're in the right job.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
But also it's
Yeah,
exactly what you said, it's the same as me being in that scene without a chronic illness, feeling faint because I hadn't
yeah,
eaten or drunk enough because we'd been filming for so long, going up
yeah,
to the director and saying, I don't feel well, I need to take a minute. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's almost
yeah,
like moving it from the because and just being like, I just don't feel well. I need to have a moment.
yeah,
But I think I'm bad at that in general as well. I've I badly broke my elbow at the end of November and
yeah,
I'm in rehab, I'm in physio at the moment, and I have fully gone back to work now, but I have to have reasonable adjustments at the moment. I
yeah,
It's exhausting when you're healing from something. I had major surgery,
mhm,
and it's taken a toll on my physicality, on my mental health, and just within my work. And I completely can relate to what you're saying with I am not maybe saying enough when I
yeah,
need to have a break or when I can't do something. And because I'm not in a sling anymore and I'm not in a cast, it's not a visible injury.
yeah,
So people just think I'm back completely to
yeah,
normal, whatever normal is.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas when I had my sling and I had my cast, I felt like it was easier to be understood.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
so I don't know, do you find that, when you're in your wheelchair as opposed to not being in your wheelchair, the invisible illness, as it were, is that a tricky balance? I can only imagine it must be with how I'm feeling with just an elbow break.
Yeah, definitely. I think like that's where I try to not only advocate for the like physically visible disabled actors, but also chronically ill, invisible actors as well. Because, like you said, with your sling and stuff and with my wheelchair, like so when I was doing the doctor's thing, for example, so my wheelchair was in the scene, but I wasn't in it. I was just kind of sitting down
Mhm.
and in between takes I was walking and all that jazz. But it is hard, like when you have an invisible illness because like people don't really understand like,
Yeah.
oh, but you don't look disabled. Um, and that can be quite frustrating, like on job and also just in
In
real
life.
life people don't really understand. And there have been times where I'll be in a wheelchair and then I'll feel all right to walk, and I'll just like get up, and like everyone like on the street is like, "Oh my God." And I've like tried to be like make it funny. There were times where I've just like got up and just like started running because it's just funny to see people's reaction.
Everyone's like, she's been healed.
Yeah, I was on when I was doing another BBC job, I got up from my wheelchair and I don't know who it was a crew member, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's a miracle." And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, what can we just say to that?
Oh God.
Yeah, so it can be quite tricky. Um, but yeah, I think that is why we need more visibility with chronically ill actors as well, because access isn't just for people with a physical disability, it's
No.
also people who have symptoms like me.
Yeah, like 100%. And honestly, I just find it, I could talk to you all day. I find it so fascinating and interesting. And
Yeah.
the fact that you're what you said, you're 20?
Yes, I'm
You're
20,
only
yeah.
20, and I feel like you've got a lot of wisdom, Emma, and I feel like,
Thank you.
I hope that as you chat to like-minded people and you're in the industry longer, that you've used
Yeah,
the word, you don't wanna feel like a burden quite a few times today, and
yeah,
I just hope that stop feeling like that, because that can't be a nice space to be in. And I
yeah,
will tell you that, I think we've all felt like a burden in some way or another in life.
yeah,
I'm in my early 30s now, and does get better with age. Just in general, you do learn more and you advocate for yourself a bit more in general, and you just get that confidence. So just to like
yeah,
let
that's
you
good to
know
know.
that you don't
Yes,
obviously need to
thank
be
you.
older to be like that, but like it just,
Yeah,
you get a little bit more, get a bit of thick skin as well.
yeah, yeah.
And I think you're just brilliant what you're doing and shining a light
Thank
on
you.
that in And the Show Goes On. So yeah, thank you for doing that. And you've mentioned like being on Doctors, which just sounded like a great experience. Sound like you were kind of looked after, in as much as, yeah, you told them when you told them what you needed.
Yeah.
Um on on that, which is great. And we've mentioned you mainly act for screen. What's the weirdest job you've done? And that can be a screen job, a theatre job, it could just be a side hustle. Have you ever been in a situation where you're like, what is this?
Yeah, so actually it was the most recent job I've done. It
Oh,
wasn't
a
like
nice fresh new one.
it wasn't like, a really weird thing, but it was quite odd. But it was research and development for, it's called Alma the Advent so it's Alma the Elephant, but the show is called Alma's Adventure or something like that. But basically the job was, me under like this massive elephant patchwork puppet, and they were trying to be like inclusive and accessible. So there's usually like two people in the elephant, and they had a wheelchair at the back. So whoever's in the back could be someone who's disabled. So that was like really, really cool, like
Yeah.
controlling the fleet. And I'm like, this is like, it was my first kind of like theatre job.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it was really cool. And like, I really appreciate as well that they tried to like make it accessible and had disabled people in mind. I thought that was really cool. But just like the whole day, I was like, I'm under this patchwork puppet with this
You're like,
other
what am I
Western accent
what
in
is
front
this?
of me. I'm like,
Wow.
what? I'm in London and I'm from Cheshire in the northwest.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just it was a crazy job. I was like, what am I doing? But it's so fun. It was great.
Wild in all the right ways, basically.
Yeah,
That just
definitely.
that sounds brilliant, and it's really funny you say that, 'cause I'm actually working on a project at the moment with an elephant puppet, and
No,
not
really.
yeah, so it's really weird. Not
That's
Elmer,
crazy.
but like a massive, large scale puppet, and we were
Yeah.
having a few kind of, teething problems with the legs, and we've got 2 standing performers in it, and, oh my gosh, like, I'm just thinking now, I'm like, a wheelchair would be like, a wheelchair user in the back of that, like, could solve some things.
Yeah, it was so strange as well because it was like it was kind of the teething situation, and there were lots of times where like I nearly fell out
Yeah.
of the wheelchair
Well,
because
that's what
I was
R&D's for, and honestly, large scale puppetry in general, you got to have those R&D days. Otherwise, like, because you've got to see how the mechanisms work. And also got to make sure, like you said, your performers feel safe and
Yeah,
comfortable. Not
yeah,
like you're going
definitely.
to roll over or fall over or, the elephant's
Yeah,
going to capsize um, on it. But
yeah,
yeah, and it's just so interesting. And I think that's amazing. That's brilliant.
yeah,
Puppetry made accessible, where it's just like, yeah, what a
yeah.
brilliant.
It's something I'd never done before, and it was just really fun. And it's R&D is a side of acting that non-actors don't see. But it's just
Yeah,
like really fun, and it's a way to connect with people. And not a lot of people can say they've been under a West End Elmer the Elephant, which is pretty cool. So I was like,
you can,
it's an odd
you know,
job, but it's great.
it's honestly the wild in the most wonderful way. And,
Yeah,
and like I said, and for those, I know we're using acronyms here. So R&D stands for research and development stage of a show. And it's basically just workshop days to try out a new concept. And that can be any artistic concept for a show. And like what you said, Emma, they're the most wonderful days. And I did one a few months ago, and I hadn't done one in years. And it's just a
yeah,
beautiful, it's just, what is it? That's just like you're getting paid to just have fun and be creative and work
yeah,
through the magic to get it
yeah.
to
And
that.
also, it's a professional job, but it doesn't feel like a formal situation. It's just like really nice and chill. And I was able to like put my legs up, and
Just,
no one even blinked twice. Like, it was just great. It was just a really
yeah.
nice casual job, and I got paid for it. So I was like, it's a
Ah,
win-win.
well, let's manifest more of that for
Oh,
2025 for you then.
100%.
Yeah, I'd love some more R&D work. I would put R&D work out there. We want more. And before we wrap up today, I just would love to ask you if you've got anything or anyone that you'd like to shout about. Obviously we've shouted about your podcast and the show goes on, and like, please guys, listen to that. And yeah, we'll put all the links in this episode. But is there anything else you'd like to kind of shine a light on?
I don't think so. There isn't anything specific at the moment, but if you follow my Instagram, which is Hollywood, and another, so Hollywood D, so two D's at the end.
Yeah.
And I do updates. And you can also follow my podcast Instagram, which is And the Show Goes On Pod. So yeah, I post regularly on both those accounts, so you'll get any updates from there.
Oh, brilliant. And I'll put both of those links straight, so you can click straight through to follow you on there.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for being part of
Thank
the
you.
arts today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Good. I hope you had fun. It's been such a lush conversation to have on a Sunday. Thanks for giving up a bit of your Sunday afternoon.
Oh, no worries.
And yeah, I'm sure we will chat. We'll chat soon. A new connection has been made.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Parts of the Arts. If you enjoyed this episode or any of the others, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Also, we would love it if you could support this passion project by buying us a coffee. All the info is below. Thank you, and see you next time.